Broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi, everybody. I'm Dr. Wendy Bohan. I'm part of the 500 Women Scientists leadership team, and I'm here to talk to you a little bit about doing social media for your pods. First off, thank you so much for volunteering to do this. Social media, as we all know, is really important for disseminating information. Hold on, technical difficulties. Okay, and we want to make sure that we're doing it correctly, or at least most effectively. So first, let's talk about our communication guidelines. We're going to communicate respectfully, directly, clearly, and productively. And we want to do that because we want to create positive change and we want to create a positive digital footprint. We're going to hold ourselves to the standard of science. So we need to clearly separate our own opinions and our own personal experience from the evidence. Both of them are important. We need to speak our truth and stand in our truth, but we need to claim that as our own experience and then talk about evidence, giving citations. As 500 Women Scientists, we focus on solutions-based discussions. So it's important to draw attention to issues, and we're going to do that too, but we want to guide the discussion and lead the discussion so that we can go further towards creating the world that we want to see. Finally, we are not going to participate in any name-calling, insulting, or belittling words of behavior, no online baiting. Just behave respectfully and hold yourself to a higher standard. So what are some of our broad social media goals, or for the purposes of this presentation, we'll call them objectives. Obviously, we want to promote 500 Women Scientists and the mission and goals of our organization. We want to provide an avenue for community members to engage in dialogue. We want to act as a notification system for events, information, all of the updates. We want to make sure that we can be a conduit for membership and other opportunities that may be available for women in science. Of course, one of our main goals is to promote equity and inclusion in science and society. We're going to highlight the contributions of women in science. In particular, we always want to make sure to amplify the voices of marginalized scholars in different spaces. And we need to provide a space for networking, meeting up, providing a community of women and allies so that we can all rise together. So I'm going to offer you a little bit of a theoretical framework for how you can think about social media, and maybe this will help when you're trying to put things together. So in order to be most effective, if you're a pod that's interested in capitalizing on the potential reach and impact of social media, it's important to create a social media strategy, or at least think through this framework. And this is going to help clarify the process and objectives of the social media program and guide your overall efforts. So a little bit of background: social media research draws from lots of different fields of study, including psychology, marketing, and sociology. This diagram has been modified from the work of Peters et al. 2013, and this outlines just a really, for me, particularly compelling framework for understanding the organic nature of social media. And this is utilizing ideas from social learning theory. So in this framework, input from the social media manager, which would be you, feeds the social media organism, which consists of 4 basic factors: audience motivation, which is social, cultural, intellectual. There's content, and that's the quality, valence, and volume of what you're putting out there. Your network structure is important: the size, the connections between people, their distribution and segmentation, and then the interaction, the expressing, sharing, networking, that sort of thing. And the interplay of these factors determines the social media outcomes, which we can measure using metrics. So the metric analysis is then used to iteratively inform social media inputs to achieve the desired objectives. We're not going to talk too much about metrics because we recognize that you're taking time out of your lives to volunteer to do this, and that's a whole nother time sink. But if you're interested, please always feel free to contact me or contact the leadership, and we can walk you through those steps as well. So theoretical understanding is important, right? But we need a workable, practical approach for beginning or improving the social media program that you already have, right? Facilitating action. So first, we need an objective, which we already talked through. You can use those broad social media objectives, or you can have your own objectives for your pods. So what's the purpose for your social media program? What are your overarching goals? And how are your goals going to meet our larger organizational objectives? So it's important to remember, let's think about the motivation here. Everybody is trying to get something out of social media. They're either getting social value, intellectual value, and or cultural value. So what kind of value does our organization and your pod provide? And I would argue that it's all 3. So input, and now we need to think about our audience. And that may be different for different pods. So the intended audience is going to determine not only the content type, but also the choice of social media platform, because different platforms appeal to different demographics. If you're interested in talking to, say, younger girls in science, you probably want to choose Instagram. If you're interested in talking to lawmakers, that's something where you can use Twitter. Looking for women in science, or if you want to talk to a more international audience, that would be Twitter or Facebook. And you can use whatever you're interested in using, whatever you have the functionality and the expertise to do. But this is just another way to sort of think through that. So how old are they? What's their knowledge base? Do you want to focus on educators in your area? Lots of different ways to think about who your audience is. So content. Content is really important. It's what's getting disseminated via these social media channels. And you can create it from scratch. You can use products that have already been created. You can share content from other sources and partner organizations. And that's important because it's going to help to leverage and disseminate quality information, as well as build our partnerships, externally facing, which is really important. And of course, always be certain to vet any shared content for accuracy and for appropriateness. And be sure to vary the types of media that you put out: video, pictures, links, text. Who are you going to trust? Who are your sources? Be sure to amplify the work and voices of scholars that are underrepresented in academic and online spaces. And if we look at the content section here on the slide, in general, there's 3 things you need to think about. The volume of content, you can post too much or too little. The quality, obviously, we always want to put out high quality information. And the valence. So valence is important because that's the emotional response that something provokes. So posts that inspire excitement or fear or awe are more likely to be shared, go viral, and thus have a wider reach. Okay, so this is kind of where the rubber meets the road. This is your posting strategy. So certain times of day are better for posting because there's more online traffic, but because you're doing this in a volunteer position, that may be more than you want to know, and you can just post, when you want to, when you need to, when you have time to, how often, when. But think about your community growth strategies. Think about your not only the content, but also the network structure. A lot of pods have a really close network structure because these are people, that know each other. They're usually in the community. How big is your community? So think about how the people are interacting. Engagement. So engagement is the social part of social media. You need to regularly engage with your audience and with your online community. So be sure to answer questions, reply to comments on things that you post in a timely way. Make sure that you like, share comments on posts from other groups and organizations, and consider ways to build community engagement. Talk to the lawmakers in your area, talk to the organizations in your area that you might be able to partner with, or that are having, different community activities. So really find ways to build out into your community and make partnerships and really start to interact in that way. So interactions, expressing, engaging, networking, sharing. Evaluation, we're not going to talk about too much because, again, that's a whole big pile of wax. So anyway, your time is limited. If you're interested in doing quantitative metric analysis on your social media, let me or any of the other women in the leadership know, and we'll be happy to point you to resources and to talk you through it. So here's some particular things about that, just for a little bit more background. Okay, so here are some potential strategies and things that you can do. So content guidelines and suggestions. We are producing content all the time. Take Action Tuesdays, Meet a Scientist. There's lots of op-eds and articles. There's special campaigns. And any products or materials that you create as a pod, these are all great things to put out on your social media feeds. News articles that are relevant to your pod. Any events that are happening. So pod meetings, marches, local events, updates from our partner organizations. And a lot of this you can get from the overall 500 Women Scientists Twitter feed or from our Facebook page. And feel free to directly share or to rework that content in a way that's more symbiotic with what your pod is trying to accomplish. It's always great to talk about the scientific contributions that are made by women and focus on women, highlight on women, come up with action items, things that people can do that day, things that they can do that week. Always be sure to highlight career and mentoring opportunities for women in science, and articles about why science matters to society. Scientific storytelling is a really important way that we can get people to see why what we do is important. So think about your narrative and your framing when you're putting these things together. Of course, scientific contributions made by women of color and other minority groups. Now, when should you post? Post regularly using content guidelines. Try to post at least 3 or 4 times a month on Facebook, no more than 4 times a week, because we don't want to overwhelm people's feeds. Make sure you're going to share some content from partners and like-minded groups. In order to increase your engagement, follow partner organizations, like the content of others, repost content from partner organizations, comment on other people's pages, reply to questions, comments, and messages. And you can do things like plan Facebook Live campaigns, which are super fun. You can do it from a pod meeting, from a march, from another event. Have pod members share parts of their day, do an Ask a Scientist monthly or quarterly. So, you can do Reddit Asks Me Anything. That's not related to Facebook, but there's all sorts of ways that you can engage with your community that are a little bit outside the box that will allow people access to scientists in a way that they may not have had before. So we'll focus on Twitter now, and I'm just going to go through Facebook and Twitter, and you can, change this around if you want to do Instagram or Snapchat or whatever. So Twitter's a little bit broader because you can post more often to Twitter. So there's a lot more things that you can put out for content guidelines. Again, all the same content stuff, the news articles about partner organizations, information on women role models and the work of women in science, any calls to action, careers and mentoring. Tips and tricks for communicating science effectively are always appreciated by our members. Scientific contributions, amplifying the signal for important women's issues and science issues. Retweet other pods and our member organizations. Retweet and amplify the voices of women and underrepresented minority scientists. And then, of course, all of your event notifications. Posting is different for Twitter. Post several times a week. Use visual content whenever possible because that's going to increase the number of people that interact with that. Use appropriate hashtags and identifiers, and when applicable, leverage trending topics. So these will usually show up on the left-hand side of your screen. So for instance, you can use a Motivation Monday hashtag and then attach that to the biography of a woman that's made a respectable contribution. Engagement. In order to get people to engage on Twitter, make sure that you mention usernames, and you can tag us at 500 Women Sci, any other appropriate organizations, and a lot of times people that you tag will tweet you back. Promptly respond to questions, encourage discussions, you can do polls, you can do other things like that. Do tweet threads. You don't have to limit yourself to one tweet. If you want to do a deeper dive into an issue, feel free to put those together, and we're always happy to look that over. If you're not comfortable doing that kind of content yet, always happy to check that out. Comment on other postings, retweet content, participate in tweetathons and other community building exercises. We've done a lot of those with the Earth Science Women's Network and other groups. So a few little Twitter tips and tricks. As I was saying, use keywords and hashtags. Hashtags double your engagement, but only use 2. Don't go through doing all the hashtags because that gets a little overwhelming. Use images. Images give you a 150% increase in retweets. Make your tweets short and sweet. You can use more than 200 characters, but 110 characters or less gets 17% more engagement. These are the peak times for tweeting. Also, tweeting on the weekend gets you more engagement. I guess people are scrolling around more when they don't have to be at work. Include links. You get 86% more retweets when you include links. And of course, we always want to cite our sources, so links are going to be a really important tool for us to use. People love statistics. It gets 5.4% more retweets. Don't you love the statistics in this little slide here? Understand Twitter trends. Again, that's like Motivation Monday or any of these things that happen to be trending where people can click on that hashtag and then they may come across your content when they wouldn't have discovered it before. Retweet experts with feedback and stagger content. Don't microburst. So don't sit down and put out 10 tweets and not log on again for like 5 days. So that's all I have for you today. Again, my name is Dr. Wendy Bohan. I'm happy to help if you need anything. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being a member of 500 Women Scientists. Our organization is built on volunteers and their love of science and really their hard work trying to make science a safer and more equitable place for everyone. So thank you very much. We really do appreciate you.